Good morning and a warm welcome to KBC News Check on this Tuesday morning. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. My name is Bentro Enjoy. Lucy Moura will be a sign language interpreter for this live news show, and for the next 2 hours or so we will be keeping tabs with what is happening in the country and what has been happening in the last couple of weeks. Talk about the new deputy president that we have, and remember we have an executive order number 2 of 2023 that was signed by President William Ruto in regards to the roles and the duties of the deputy president. We will be looking at that in depth. We'll also be looking at the United States elections. This is why they always shape up our foreign policy in regards to how we do things and trade with other partners, and especially the United States. We'll also be looking at the new political formations that we do expect after the little shakeup that we have had in the last couple of weeks. We'll also be looking at counties. Counties say they are cash crunched and they want the national government to give them the equitable revenue share. But we can also get something from there. We can also be looking at the county's own source revenue. Other than that, the KCPE examination that commenced yesterday continued today. We also be touching on that and also be looking at the news shaping up the conversation at this hour. Many thanks for joining us. Allow me now to introduce my panel of experts, beginning from my immediate left. We have Dr. Churchill Saoke. Dr. Saoke is a leadership and governance expert, and he's also a lecturer at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Just next to him, we have another doctor. He's Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan. Daktari is also a political analyst and also a governance expert. Next to him, we have Sami Kipkemboi Meli. Sami is also a political analyst. Gentlemen, good morning and karibuni sana.
Asante.
Good morning. Well, we'll be looking at how the new political formations will be at the moment. But you do remember on Friday, we were with the engineer Wadhimba, another governance expert, and we followed keenly how things unfolded from the courts, and now on Friday we swore in our third deputy president under the 2010 constitutional dispensation. And I'll just ask my director Mugo Kariuki to also look at some slides we had prepared in regards to what exactly the president did. If you remember, the current president was the deputy president to President Uhuru Kenyatta, and after their fallout, actually, it's more or less like as a deputy, he did not really have duties. But the president signed an executive order number 2 of 2023 outlining that. And that was done last year, where the president, in regards to the constitution, the deputizes the president in execution of his functions in accordance to Article 147 of the Constitution. Allow us not to go to the Article 147 of the Constitution at the moment. We did see that even the impeached deputy was actually chairing cabinet committees. This is one of the roles that also are quite instrumental in regards to the deputy president, and also oversees the implementation of cabinet decisions across all ministries and state departments. And the impeached deputy, we do remember some of our leaders arguing that he has been sabotaging government projects, and indeed that was one of the 11 counts that he had at the Senate and at the National Assembly. His fourth role was to coordinate intergovernmental relations between national government and county governments, including chairing the Intergovernmental Budget Economic Council, the famous IBEC. This is also another quite instrumental role in regards to how the counties work hand in hand. We talk about 47 counties in the country, but we talk about 48 county governments in regards to the 47 counties and the national governments as well. Another role is a liaison with the constitutional commissions and independent offices in matters that require intervention by the national government, or which he deputizes, including on budgets, policy formulation, and implementations of the recommendations. Another role of the deputy president, as enshrined in the executive order number 2, a sixth role regards to this order, was to coordinate the planning and supervise the implementation of development partners funded programs and projects. And that is why I say that we will be talking about the US election, because our foreign policy also speaks volumes in regards to our development partners and also funded programs in the country, which we have many. The seventh role was to oversee public sector reforms, and the last but not least, any other function as may be assigned by the president. Gentlemen, those are some of the roles that the head of state, that is President William Ruto, signed in his Executive Order number 2 last year. And many have talked about the deputy president role or the vice president role being jinxed. We are now having 13 deputy presidents and vice presidents since we gained independence in 1963. And maybe we can have a quick look on how we got here, and also how many we've had, and who are some of these vice president and deputy president that we've had since independence. Well, we started out outset since we became a republic, that is on 12 December 1964. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was the first vice president, of course, under KANU. The second one was Joseph Murumbi, who only served for 3 months, that is 120 days, and they had, of course, a fallout as well. Daniel Arap Moi, who later on became the president for 24 years, was the vice president from 5th of January 1967 to the 22nd of August 1978. That is a total of 11 years cumulatively, and almost 12 years under the ruling party KANU back then. Another vice president who also became the president was Mwai Kibaki, who was a vice president for 9 years, from 1978 to 1988. Next, we had one of also the shortest serving vice president back then, that was Josephat Karanja, who also had some jitters, impeachment jitters, and he opted to resign. He was a vice president for only 1 year and 38 days. Next is Professor George Saitoti, who also was the deputy president from May of 89 to 98, a total of 8 years. Of course, they were on and off with President Moi, gentlemen, if you remember, but he always found his way as a second in command. And the president back then, I remember, he stayed almost for 2 years, the country without a DP. Yes. But we'll also be talking about that, because also the court said that that position under the constitution dispensation cannot remain vacant. Then we had also another short-serving vice president of Kenya, who happens to be the prime cabinet secretary at the moment, that is Musalia Mudavadi, who was our vice president for only 60 days in the run-up to the 2002 general election. Next was Michael Kijana Wamalwa, who died in office after serving a total of 232 days. If you notice, the first 7 vice presidents we've had all were under the ruling party back then, that is KANU. Then Michael Kijana Wamalwa came in with NAC, if you guys can remember, and unfortunately, after he passed on, President Mwai Kibaki back then appointed Mudi Awori to serve for the remainder of the year, that is 4 years and about 100 days. The 10th vice president that we had, you can have the next slide, that is Kalonzo Musyoka. He is the Wiper Democratic Movement party leader, and he was in office for 5 years. We do remember what happened after the 2007 post-election violence. Now the next 3 are all under the 2010 constitutional dispensation. We begin with our current president, who was the deputy president beginning 2013 to 2022, a total of 9 years and 157 days. He was under the Jubilee ticket. And after that, we had the just impeached Deputy President, that is Geoffrey Rigathi Gachagua Origiji, who served for a total of 2 years and 48 days under the United Democratic Alliance. And the one that we have is about 5 days, less than a week, right, gentlemen?
Yeah.
About a week now. Abraham Kithure Kindiki, who is our current deputy president, who was sworn in on the 1st of November 2024, was nominated, and his name was passed by Parliament. That is the journey that we've had, some rocky patches here and there, but either way, the constitution that we have right now does not permit that position to remain vacant. That was alluded to by a 3-judge bench who ruled that on the last day of October 2024. Gentlemen, karibuni sana.
Asante.
The head of state had some really strong words during the swearing in on Friday. Daktari, I'll start with you. And he said that this is now, it's all hands on deck, something that he had missed for the last 2 years. Just spells out how lonely he felt. I'd like to pick your mind in regards to the new task that is ahead of our new Deputy President, Abraham Kithure Kindiki.
Well, those were pretty, as you have mentioned, and thanks, Ben. Those are strong words as the President had used about the expression of loneliness in leadership. And the details around that he best will be able to explain. Sometimes it can be very lonely in the corner office, and the need to have people who support you in advancing the aspirations of the country as a president is very important. And maybe this could have been some of the things that may have informed the idea of the need for him to have the changes within the executive, and especially at the portfolio of the DPs. And specifically, I say this because the position of the deputy president is pretty a position that really needs a lot of balance, because you are a principal assistant, and that means that you need to be careful in the moderation of the pursuit of your political ambitions, and also helping your boss to achieve his goals. If you do not balance, you will end up conflicting with the boss's interests. And I think that these are some of the things that many of the vice presidents, especially who have come after the 2010 constitution, have faced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm looking at somebody said that the vice president cursed, but somebody said as well that one of the issues that we are finding our president and deputies having issues since time immemorial, since when Jaramogi was the first vice president, is because the vice presidents always harbor a political interest to take over the top seat. We've seen that in the last government. We've seen that when we still had the old constitution, but this time round things look like it could be different, because Abraham Kithure Kindiki, I remember in 2022, he was mooted. His name was mooted by almost all the MPs that were on the deputy president back then, who is the president side. But do you believe it's more or less harboring political interests that always bring issues when it comes to this position, Dr.?
I think the important thing we must understand is the structure of our political landscape gives us a way that every person who holds any top executive offices will be eyeing political seats. That has been the formation of how our political architect has been. Beside that, if you look at Kinley, the former vice president was a politician and had to be a member of parliament then. And for you to be a member of parliament, for you to be a vice president, you must be a member of parliament. And that itself means then that you are a politician who is now scaling up to a position of the executive. And that's why we had our ministers, including the president, coming from political backyard, where they held a constitution, a constituencies that must be named after them. And you remember many people used to say that if you don't, during Moi and Kibaki's time, if you don't secure your constituency seat, then even if you have bidded for presidency, you will never become the president. That indicates that the structure of all our executive lineups are politically, excited or are politically formed from the grassroots level. But when we came to the 2010 Constitution, things slightly changed. I wish they would have changed also the deputy positions being out of politics, because if you go through a political process that is being elected into a position, then you cannot separate yourself from politics, and that you should always think of what next in that political ladder. And that's why you see everyone who comes in will feel like he wants to become the next president. He wants to become the next. Nobody will want actually to become. Nobody wants to become a cabinet secretary until when everybody has got his seats, and perhaps you have lost your seat, or you never had somewhere to compete because of one reason or another, and then you go into now at the mercy or the umbrella of the politicians who have secured their seats or the executive for you to be part of that particular government. And that is why politics plays a role when we are appointing or selecting our executive. Mm-hmm. Having said that, the difference between the former impeached deputy president and the current deputy president is that Rigathi Gachagua, having been elected and shown clearly that he was able to secure votes for the president from the mountain region, I guess not the whole mountain, but according to his claim, the region of the mountain, that gave him a lot of confidence in that he thought now he's a shareholder, and that's the thing he has came out with. Contrary to the way the structure and the constitution is in holding the executive offices, once you have been elected as a president and a running mate as a deputy president, the moment you assume the office, that's why you have to swear in almost 3 oaths differently. One is loyalty to your boss, that's the deputy president, the president himself, the constitution, to the oath of office, where you are supposed to be doing the government executive work. So the reason as to why all those oaths are significant is to divert you away from that political menace that you went through during the time of the election, then coming out to now a role that is governed by the constitution and principles of the organizational policy, where I mean, every institution has a framework of guidance that will lead you to follow in order for you to execute the specific roles that are there. If you sit in why the president was very lonely, we may just flash it back a bit, mm-hmm. is that why the president was very lonely is that because the president had a deputy or a principal assistant who is supposed to be sharing committees of the cabinet. And therefore, if he has failed in fulfilling that particular role, meaning then the president is forced. By constitution, no one else can share. If it's not the president, then it is the deputy president who has been mandated to do that. So if the president, the deputy president is not there, and the president has a huge ballooned diary, then that means part of his work was not delivered, which in essence was delegated to the deputy president. Mm-hmm. Coming to the current deputy president, I think Professor Abraham Kidure Kindiki is someone who is known to be loyal in terms of when he is in certain office. If you look at keenly his role in national duties, you will realize that when he was the leader of the majority in the Senate, It's only the only time that his the deputy president, whom he was an ally to, decided to move away from the government. And when certain motions were brought to Senate to go against his so-called friend then as the deputy president, then he couldn't entertain that. That means regardless of whatever force the executive were imposing on him, he said, this is the way to go and I will not want to be disloyal. And that way then he was pulled out of his office and replaced by someone else. But only that occasion that probably one will say he has ever left his office without completing his term. But the record he has shown when he was given the interior docket in terms of the police reforms, in terms of bringing a bit of sanity into the system of our security organs, has clearly boosted his, his mandate as a performer within the sector. He is the only cabinet secretary known to have put on a jungle uniform and gone into the battlefield in northern region of the country, where he defined it as disturbing areas. So it's not all the cabinet secretaries that we used to know could do that. They could operate from the desks and try to mandate other uniformed officers to go and do the work. But you know, when the main person, the leader, after executing all his responsibilities in terms of the policy formulation, and then he goes into the front line to go and also participate in ensuring that the safety and security of Kenya is also addressed, then I think he is a performer. And we expect probably that as he now finishes up his role in the executive as the second in command, I think Kenyans will going to benefit much. However, let's not forget one thing. He is also now a potential candidate for the next
for the big seat.
For the big seat as the president.
Mbeli, I'm looking at the constitution process and also the court process. I remember a section of Kenyans were unhappy on how things have been have unfolded quite fast, talking about lightning speed. But they also need to appreciate the fact that these constitutional moments are there and they are enshrined in the constitution. Why I'm saying this is because you do remember that when President Moi stayed for almost 2 years, I think it was 18 months, without a vice president. And we are looking at the court saying under this new, the constitution, it's 14 years now, the constitution dispensation does not allow for the office of the deputy president to remain vacant.
Thank you, Troy, for having me. First, I said that before in our last discussion, that once the deputy president had been impeached, that means there was no deputy president. And therefore, the action should have moved very fast to the next house. For example, it moved from the National Assembly. Within no time, it is at the Senate. And then once the Senate made their decision, the gazettement, and then the other processes began. I said our leadership has shown first that they can do things when they want to do them fast for us. Going back to the deputy president who was impeached, one is that he lacked loyalty. And going to your earlier question about the president feeling lonely, if you can flash back President Ruto, when he was a deputy president, he was carrying the government on his shoulders. In fact, most of the promises were made by him more than what President Uhuru Kenyatta did. So you could feel the government with him. Whenever he would move, you would feel the government. Unfortunately, that oomph was not there when Rigathi was moving around. He would concentrate around the mountain, the Murima. So, and I think every other time he would speak, there was something that was being created in the minds of Kenyans. Actually, his speeches were more of insightful than uniting. And looking at the Constitution, I would hear Abrake. I know now he has a new name. We no longer have Rigiji, we have now Abrake. When he saw the three oaths, you could feel the words of those oaths that the holder of that office needs to stand by that. And being the deputy president's office is a jinxed office in that you are deputizing somebody. It's not your government yourself. It's somebody's government. So you are deputizing it. And you must sing their song if that government has to be successful. Otherwise, if you sing another song, you would bring division in the house. And as the sayers say that a house divided cannot stand. And I think the president saw it ahead of time. The legislature saw it. And even judiciary agreed with the decisions. So coming back to your question, over the years, this office and our judiciary, our executive, our legislature has shown us when it comes to people-centered issues, they take so long. I'm told even in the office of the speaker, there are a backlog of bills that have not been passed. In fact, the impeached deputy president was saying, in case they have shown that they can do this very fast, then the coffee bill should come very fast. But there are issues, the timelines that were given by the Constitution, the 7 days, the 14 days, the 60 days. And I was looking at this like a doctor, for example. You have a patient. Your schedule is saying that this patient, we need to operate on them in 6 hours. You have done the necessary arrangement, and then you realize that this was just a 30-minute operation. Do you stick to 6 hours, or you just finish in 30 minutes? Mm-hmm. You just finish in 30 minutes. The Senate is within the premise of the Parliament buildings. Just a walk from the other speaker's office to this other speaker's office. The government printer is just across the road. So I don't think that will take days for us to have a gazette notice or anything to be prepared. So that speed was actually good, and I wish they are certain in that. Coming to the new deputy president, remember he was the attorney for the president then at The Hague. And their argument at The Hague, you saw how they stood with the president, and I think he won the heart of the president at that time. If you look at the duties that he was given when he was the Minister of Interior, the guns are silent in the valleys. The backlog that was there on passports in Nyayo House. I was passing there this morning. I had a chance to walk around the Nyayo House. There are no long lines anymore. There is organization. If you are coming to apply for a passport, this is the side you enter. If you are picking a passport, you go to the other side and wait. Even I could see the NYS assisting in the dispatchment of those passports. And you could hear that there is no longer any backlog in passport preparation. They even give a priority for urgent passports, and that is good. So it shows that he is somebody, when given a duty, he can do it and do it well. Vis-a-vis the other, there's a sharp contrast in the two people. And I could hear the speeches, for example. I want to put myself in a position of a DCC, being lectured, being told some words that you cannot say before children, being said to you in public, and the media could capture that. And this is your deputy. Just imagine, ask yourself, are you even comfortable? You don't know what next would come from their mouth. Mm-hmm. And remember, right now, we have a doctor as the president and a professor as a deputy president. What a nice time to be in Kenya. So I'm looking forward to him pushing the other cabinet secretary. Now he's chairing IBEC. Mm-hmm. We are looking forward to having money going to counties. The 20 billion that there was a dispute, I am sure being an educationist, as he is a lawyer by profession, he would be able to mediate that and remove that the disagreement between the national government and the county government. He should be able also to push the other cabinet secretaries to deliver on the mandate, the plan. Now he has a bigger constituency. It's no longer the interior ministry. Now he has a bigger constituency where he chairs even cabinet subcommittees to make sure that that plan that they were talking about, the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza, should be fully implemented as it was said. We don't want to hear the president alone talking about that. He should push even the other people, the other holders of those dockets, to keep saying. You could hear some people. I would watch another interview last week. The person in charge of that docket cannot fully explain what is happening, and the people would ask themselves, a whole PS cannot explain to us the government policy, how it is going to be implemented. I wonder, why do they sit in those offices? How would you run a program which you have no feel of it? You should own the program. Look, interrogate every other thing. Learn it, then disseminate it. I would look at the president himself, the way he would talk on issues. And the other time he was warning the cabinet secretary that if I know more in your docket than you know it, then there's a problem. And actually he meant it. And if we give President William Ruto time, if we give him time, ample time to implement the policies that they have, I'm sure he will make a very big difference in this country. Look at when they were being sworn in, they said that the coffers were empty. And I hope now the coffers are there. You are looking at Kenya Airways making profits for the first time in so many years.
Okay.
You could...
Yes, and we're going to look at now the political side of all this, and that is what I want us to canvass. Because, Daktari, I'm looking at the fallout. Let's begin with way back, the fallout of President Moi back then, and his vice president, that is George Saitoti. He decamped and they formed the Rainbow Coalition in 2002. I'm looking at in 2017, after the 2017 election, after the fallout of the President Uhuru and now the President Ruto, gave birth to UDA. Indeed, a section of Kenyans also are not quite comfortable with this new arrangement, and there are going to be political alignments. Well, I'm saying this, we have seen also as early as yesterday, DAPK or DAPK and also Wiper, they want to exit Azimio. And of course, they are gonna be, the DP shake-up is also gonna shake up the politics of this country. How do you think the political realignments are going to form?
I think that is pretty expected because, you know, as my colleagues have mentioned, people get into politics with the ultimate goal of going to the higher office. Everybody who gets into any political office, right from the MCA level, your ultimate goal is that one day you can be the President of the Republic of Kenya. And they have a right to have that vision. They have a right to aspire to the highest level of their dreams. And that's why, as a country, we should be able to create level playing field where everybody can achieve whatever they dream. So, so in all through these fallouts, we have actually been seeing the idea that everybody dreams to become the #1 of the country. And, you know, those are some of the things that brought in even the fallout between, you know, Saitoti and Moi, because the people within KANU that time felt that, you know, being in KANU was not good enough for them to ascend to power. And I think the same thing was also with the current president and the former president. It was better for them to lobby when they are outside or when they are opposing the government. And, you know, sometimes in politics it's much easier to accumulate political capital and woo the public by by purporting to oppose the establishment. And I think that that is one of the easiest ways that kingmakers have arisen. And so even at this time, the realignments and the reshaping of the political environment is likely to take similar forms. There are people who are certain political players are likely to take advantage of the discontent of certain sections of Kenyans and purport or come out as the saviors of these, or as the purported leaders of these discontent sections of the republic, and with the aim of them being the leaders of that. Being the leaders of that political segment, and then using it to establish a political movement that then can be able to be used to advance a political course against the current this current regime. And so, when you look at Azimio, the Azimio leaders, the Wiper and the DAP Kenya, who are trying to exit from Azimio. The idea is that how can we be able to position ourselves to win over the hearts of the people who are not happy with the ouster of the former DP and the appointment of the current DP. How can we be able to win? What position can we be able to create to win over their hearts? And one of the easiest ways is distance yourself from a political formation that appears to support this current establishment, or that appears to support the broad-based government. And then you use that to position yourself as the savior or as the defender of the discontent population. In that so doing, you are going to inherit. And the idea is that many of the bigger political players, DAP Kenya and Wiper, they are seeking to position themselves to inherit the sympathies of the former DP. And so whatever move they are making in the chessboard is to ensure that how can we be able to get this sympathy vote and use it to create an opposing political formation against the current regime in 2027. So I think for me that is what is really at play. And of course the government will also want to seek ways of survival, and by ensuring that how do we then solidify our current political establishment to counter any. So some of the other things that you might likely to see are possibilities of the regime looking for ways to get inroads into the sympathy vote, so that there could be divisions within those who are sympathizers of the former deputy president, with the aim of ensuring that it is not a solid block as it is perceived.
And Doc, maybe we have a court case that is the former deputy president has a court case, or he's going to explore all the avenues in the corridors of justice. But as it stands, he cannot hold public office, I think, for the next 10 years. Can he reinvent himself? And looking at the political alignments that are slowly but surely gaining pace, can he reinvent himself politically?
Yes, before I respond to that, there's a point that my colleague has mentioned in regards to how effective and efficient the process was in ousting out the deputy president. And as much as political processes are never clean and they are never justifiable, because they can happen in any form, the process, gazettement of the process at night, ensuring clearance has been got from relevant authorities within night, I think those are things that are questionable, because there was no logical reason not to wait for the morning sign to come, so that the normal process when people are in the office, that process can be completed. And in any case, there were no also courts which were open at night, and our courts usually start at 9 o'clock. So at night, we don't have also courts. So if we were fearing that someone will rush to court and bring a court order, that was not also visible, because from 8 o'clock you can do all the work that you did at night. So I think sometimes efficiency that is not ordinary. You know, there is ordinary efficiency and there is extraordinary efficiency. This was, I'll refer it as an extraordinary efficiency that our parliamentarians as well as our executive has portrayed and told Kenyans that indeed they can do work like that. If that is what our parliamentarians and our executive can do, then can they replicate that to the service provision to Kenyans so that it becomes very efficient? Because if a letter comes to my desk, I sign it immediately and dispose it off to where it is supposed to go. Take to a letter to one of the government officers. That letter, I don't know why it is necessary for it to be on that table for a while, a day or two or a month, or even sometimes 6 months, before an individual who is seated there every day, and his main mandate is to make sure that anything in this office is effectively addressed so that they can become useful in where they are supposed to action it. So efficiency should be something that must be portrayed in all avenues where we provide services in this nation. All right. So that is one. Now, in terms of Rigiji, or rather the former deputy president, impeached, because for him he has gone with another title. He must be impeached, the former vice president impeached. According to our constitution, once you are impeached, you remain impeached. It's a title you earn, basically, until the 10 years ends, is when probably you become useful. So as you rightfully said, he will not be able to execute any services in this nation, both political office and executive. Meaning then, in the current court battle, the court will never address political process. And that is why it was so easy for the current deputy to be sworn in and take up his role. What they are trying to fight for at the moment, which will have been something they will have fought for as early as when the case was transferred to the Senate and before the proceedings of Senate started, Rigathi Gachagua will have been bold and be a man to just resign from that position and go on the other side to fight for this nation if he is a patriotic in terms of, a political heavyweight.
But I don't think that could have gone well with his supporters, just throwing in the towel and...
Now, that is very true. You know, sometimes you swallow your ego. That is ego, actually. Why? You can only be useful to your supporters when you can represent them. If you can't represent them, who will going to listen to you? Imagine with the time, people will be told, Rigathi was rejected by the system, and therefore a rejected person cannot represent you. What will happen? Kimani Ichung'wah will say that in a rally, and everybody will going to buy that, because he is no longer useful in terms of the political landscape as well as representing in the executive. So he can't hold any office. So if you are redundant now, do I call it redundant, or you have, you are nothing. And therefore, it would have been good for him not to waste a lot of resources in the corridors of justice and exit and then fight from the other side. Now that has not happened. What proof does he have that actually the courts will going to do a postmortem of the process that he has been removed out with and prove that this process was not right? I don't think. Actually, one thing that people are talking about, and they are tabling it, you know, our legal team are usually, they never tell you this is wrong.
Yes.
They always tell you this is right. We can do it.
They were actually, the lawyers, they have a way of just keeping the case going and going and going.
But let me tell you one thing. There is no way that a political process can be re-audited. The way that you cannot interfere with the outcome of a political process is the same way that even if you audit their process, on what benchmark are you using to audit that? If it was not a political process, Rigathi Gachagua was removed unofficially and through unjust from the office. Why? The Mutise, who has taken the motion there to remove him, the bill, the person who sponsored the bill, with so-called Mutise, did not prove all the things that he mentioned or the accusation that he caused. Did that hold any water? That he did not prove to Senate, and therefore the case should be returned back, and he goes and look for more case that can be justified? No. It was just a political process, and it was a ticking box process. And therefore they did that, and Rigathi was removed. So even if the courts do post-mortem of all the processes that has been taken through in ousting out Rigathi from the office, the bottom line is that this was a political process, and a political process cannot be audited or reversed in its nature. Even if now today they say the process they have taken was unconstitutional, what will be the outcome? Nothing.
Maybe
So
you can have
the impeachment. Will they change the impeachment?
10 years
No. Will they change the
No.
impeachment?
No,
So the
not at all.
impeachment is the one which subjected him to the 10 years, not the process. And therefore, I think it is important for Kenyans to understand that as much as they will want to clean up themselves in terms of thinking that the process was not constitutional, still the impeachment cannot be overturned. So long as the impeachment cannot be overturned, then you remain impeached, and you are subjected to the 10 years without any leave. So if you think that you are going to have a better chance, then use other methods. But I think my advice for him would have been, and I did when the process was going on in most of our media houses, that the best thing is that sometimes you don't fight up to the end to destroy yourself. You fight to the certain limit, and once you see you are defeated, you fall back and say that indeed looks like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. On that note, I think the best time for me to bolt out is this time, to minimize, even military, when they go, when you're in the forefront, and you see that the opponents are progressing more rapidly than yourself, and you are not able to maintain them, to minimize your casualty, you withdraw very fast, so that you strategize yourself. So Rigiji would have done that, but senior counsels who wanted to show off a bit that they are able to demonstrate to Kenyans that the process of impeachment was fraud, then I think they didn't help him. They touched him in the forest. Therefore, he has gone back to the mountain.
Do you share his sentiments in regards to that? And is there an opportunity for him to reinvent himself? Let's be very honest. He's talked about the famous Mrima for the last couple of months. And let's face facts. He still holds a lot of influence in the Mount Kenya region.
Now, to crown what the Daktari has said, is there is one adage that says an experienced dancer knows when to leave the stage. And I quoted last week and I said one thing. If you want experienced lawyers, go with Rigiji's lawyers. But if you want good advisors, don't pick his friends. His friends let him down. Unfortunately, again, his lawyers let him down. They didn't advise him at the right time to leave the stage. 30 cases and you are losing all of them. You hit, you are missing. You hit, you are missing. At the 30th case, you should have known when to stand down and say, no, now I can have a time to fight another day. Unfortunately, he waited until the last minute. Everything was dispensed. Now he has been rendered useless for the next 10 years. Kenyan politics is local. And local politics mean that you must be able to represent the people. You must get a stage to represent these people. I'm telling you, by the time we finish next year, his local member of parliament will be more famous than him. Because people will forget you. Just imagine, for example, the former vice president, Mudi Awori, coming into political scene at the moment. The Gen Z don't know him. They will not even remember what he did. So Kenyans forget over time. And Kenyans adopt new things with time. They keep on moving with the trend of that day. Last week and for the last 1 month, Rigiji was trending. Now the curve has reached climax. Now it is going anti-climax downwards. He has reached a point of diminished returns. So right now, even his support is now coming downwards slowly because other leaders are taking the stage. Number two, once he realized that I had a difference with the president, one, he should know the person he was competing with. President William Ruto does not give up easily. He isn't a person, he fights to the end. If he has started something, he must finish it. Look at how he started the affordable housing. It has come down our throats, and now we are swallowing the bitter pill of our resistance. He has said this goes to the end. So the same thing, if he was the one championing his removal, it had to go. So, and perhaps he had done enough research. And being a political process, 5 counts out of 11, if he was to be cleared even by the courts today, the courts cannot clear all the 11. They only needed 1 count out of the 11. So Mutuse did his, Honorable Mutuse did his homework well. He said, I'll come with as many as possible. Just the way you go hunting with 100 dogs. If you go hunting with 100 dogs, you might come with an animal home. But if you go hunting with 1 dog, the animal might eat that 1 dog, and you come back, even yourself will be consumed. So being a political process, you just needed to hate Rigiji enough and spread that hate to the others. Infect the other members of parliament with the hate. And once they hate you enough, they just needed to vote. There was no even proving of those allegations. The senators, you could hear them. They are, in all the 5 counts, they were above 40 in the voting, above 45 in the voting on the 5 counts. That means there was enough. And I was saying, us who are watching the TVs and the media, we didn't have the benefit of the documentation. They had the benefit of the documentation, which I'm told they were voluminous. And therefore, not all the volumes were inspected. But for the members of parliament and the senators, they were able to look at what was on the table, what was being investigated. And now, is there a future for Rigiji? Perhaps Rigiji can take a sabbatical leave. He needs to heal. He needs guidance and counseling at the moment.
So you say he in the next 1 year he will not be holding as much power as he has been saying. He will not be holding that voice
unless there is any other miracle that will come. And I said, Kenyan politics is local. As long as you are at the national level discussing national issues, you are relevant. If you are just going to charge services and getting the microphone, the benefit of the microphone, well and good. But you cannot influence the Kenyan thinking. The Kenyan thinking is mostly on representation. What can you effect to them with the opposition you have at that moment? So in the next few months, don't give him even a year, in the next few months, the anticlimax would have reached the level of the axis, the x-axis, and therefore he would operate at that point until he reinvents himself.
All right.
The likes of the Wiper and DAPK, they want to bring Rigiji in. And that is the option. And perhaps I've heard rumors that Rigiji is coming with a political party. Perhaps that is what they are coming to be together.
Right.
But there are other people who ride on his fame.
All right. And we'll be wrapping up on that in regards to our news take this morning. And we want to take a quick break. But when we come back, the U.S. elections will be today, although 71 million people had already voted earlier in the early vote. And also Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, very close, actually one of the closest U.S. election in history. And there are some Kenyans who are also contesting some of the civic seats there. We'll be looking at that foreign policy when we come back.